What's an American issue you are too European to understand? Obligatory. I'm an American, but work remotely for a European country. My European colleagues cannot wrap their heads around the fact that most Americans, do not have employment contracts. Recently I had a conversation with a colleague and I could see her visibly glitch after she made a comment about something being in my employment contract, and I told her that I don't have one. Edit. This kind of blew up overnight for me. Let me explain a bit. I was originally hired by our US office. I interviewed and was eventually offered the job verbally. The company then sent me an offer letter that outlined starting salary, number of vacation days, 10 days, another thing that surprised my EU colleagues, and basic benefits. We negotiated, finalized numbers, salary, and I got a revised letter. Through a number of circumstances I was transferred to our home office in Europe. My manager is there, my team is there, etc. And I work remotely from the US. Over the years I've negotiated raises and more vacation time through my managers and our CEO, but don't have a contract. The offer letter is not a contract. In the US, most of us are employees at will, which means that we can be terminated at any time, as long as it's not a discriminatory reason. On the flip side, we can quit whenever we want, though it's traditional to give at least a 2 weeks notice. Edit 2. The employees at will concept only applies to non-union and others who do not have contracts. I've lived in the US for 30 plus years, and I still don't understand the fraternity sorority system. 1. Where are the street lights in mostly part of the neighborhoods? At least here in SD, have a walk after sunset is risky cause it's pretty dark. 2. Cars passing you in highway by the right line. 3. Driving with 16yo, voting with 18yo, but not being able to drink until 21yo. Crazy. ICE's actually having data caps on wired connections in 2019. It's only in some states, but why does the cap to exist to begin with? We existed without it perfectly fine beforehand, and now we need one. Bullshit. It's just another way for Comcast to milk more money out of the consumer. Edit. I appreciate all of the replies and upvotes. Unfortunately I cannot reply to everyone. I'll be upvoting the replies that make sense or amuse me, since I can't reply to all of you. 3. Why pay for the bigger soda cup if there are free refills for the small? Why are you incapable of building bathroom stalls without a 5 cm gap in it? For everyone asking what 5 cm is, it is roughly 2 inches or 166,667 feet in your fantastic way of measuring things. Sticking stuff into laws that have nothing to do with law itself. You'd have law on traffic safety and somebody would stick in passage rider, I believe they are called, that prohibits abortion without consent. F the father. I mean, how can you even stick a clause that has nothing to do with actual topic? Your bathrooms. What idiot thought it was okay to have very small doors with gaps on all sides in every stall? How are you supposed to quietly poop and stink and fart without everyone seeing you? I can understand why you are so afraid of unisex bathrooms. Black Friday. Every time I see a video about it I cringe. The behavior depicted is always utterly disgusting and so unbelievably primal. Over here we have a prolonged period where extreme sales are allowed, and even though there's more shoppers than normal I can't recall people being desperate for a stupid discounted item. Edit. A lot of very decent responses here. Thank you. I'm very happy to see this is completely overblown, and that I was wrong for a big portion of it. That being said, it seems like media is a big problem. I should have known. Lunch debt. Why is that a thing? Why are the children being held accountable and unable graduate? It's a goddamn lunch. Why do you pay the taxes yourself? It's way easier to have it done for you by your state country, since you have to pay anyway. Showing prices before tax like my dudas, it looks cheaper but it ain't a G-mang IG. Anything that happens in high school really. Edit. Geez, I'm getting a lot of replies. I'd like to respond to them all and discuss some more, but I don't really have that much time. Sorry. The lack of paid maternity leave. The thought of having to hand my children to strangers and go back to work weeks after giving birth. Nobody seems enraged about what that must do to babies and mothers. I think a good portion of that is a lot of people just don't even know that there is an alternative. Until I started talking to people in other countries paying attention to worldwide information, I was not even aware that American paid time off and maternity leave was shit. I was perfectly happy with my employer for providing me 2 weeks paid vacation that cannot be taken all at once, because that is significantly better than a lot of small employers like mine offer. So in turn you are grateful to your job for even allowing maternity leave, not getting mad that it is not longer. What? 2 weeks and can't be taken all at once. What's the point even? I'm Australian and I know we are known for having approximately 500 days of holidays each year, but for a full-time worker the minimum is 4 weeks paid leave each year, and then you can negotiate for even more flexibility. So for instance, I can take my 4 weeks at full pay, or I could negotiate to say take 8 weeks at half pay if my employer agrees. How do you not go completely insane only having 2 weeks a year away from work, and not even all at once? To me that legit sounds like a form of torture. Having to register for voting. What? Why don't you just get a letter at home stating you only need that letter and an ID, show up here or there on that day and that's it? Drinking tap water. I'm used to drinking tap water all day. I never buy water, since it's the same as tap water Reddit. I was once on vacation in Africa, and that was my first encounter with how tap water is in some other countries. I could never imagine undrinkable tap water in Europe. American here. I have a British friend who didn't understand why most Americans prefer coffee as opposed to tea. Not rioting or demonstrating. I mean I'm French, so the bias is big here. Edit. Damn. Thanks for the gold. You don't always see it, but it happens. The Million Man March is a great yearly example. There are definitely protests, but to be effective, it has to make noise. A 200-person protest might be big news on a local news channel, or maybe even a state news channel, but it won't break federal news unless it's a really slow news day. But for millions of people to take part, leave their job for a day or more, and travel to where others are, it's a huge undertaking, and it is debatable if it actually does any good at all. I don't remember the last time anything actually happened because of a protest. To really do it, you have to be disruptive, and that usually means multiple days, which means people are losing their jobs, probably. American work culture. Euro here. I have direct experience of working in high-tech office environment. US folk arrive in early and leave late. But productivity is rubbish. People seem to spend so much time wandering the corridors in R37. 5 hours we easily I did as much as the US 50, minus 60 hours. We figured it was all about being seen to be a hard worker as job security was so flimsy. Can someone in Europe or Germany specifically tell me how David Hasselhoff became so famous there after a so-so run in the States? $50K for a university, while average American earns around $40K bucks. In Norway we pay a deposit every time we buy soft drinks, beer etc, and get that money refunded when we return the empty bottles back to the store. Why don't you have that? I don't get it. It's good for the environment and prevents people from just tossing them around everywhere. Like the other person said, you do get a return on it. The amount varies by states. Some comedy TV shows have had episodes where the person takes a large amount of items across to other states for the money. Often our homeless population, which is another issue, will put up the bottles and cans to turn them in for money. Also, some of the local juice places allow you to return the bottle for a discount. As I've not seen it yet, tipping culture. It's insane to me that in America, you're some social pariah for not giving a tip because the workers needed to live, but haven't thought instead of giving them bonuses, why don't we have a system where they are paid a fair wage by their bosses? I mean here in the UK we tip, but it's usually around 10% for very good service. In America it seems like 20%. Is the default for anything, and you have to do it, or you can't afford to eat out, which to me means it isn't a tip. Edit. This comment helped me discover you can disable reply notifications because duck me, I do not need 70 responses to this lol. My bet is that a ton of these differences can be explained by the percentage of Americans who live in rural areas relative to the percentage of Europeans living in rural areas in any given country. There are twice as many people in Europe, in a land area that's about the same size as the US. People live in closer proximity to other people. Huge portions of the American population live in rural areas, celebrate that fact, and have more conservative values and opinions associated with living in rural areas. Rural Europeans aren't less conservative than rural Americans, they just make up a smaller portion of the population, and are relatively less isolated. Edit. It's also true that the American system of government is set up in a way that gives rural Americans greater influence over the government than urban Americans. So it's not just that there's a large rural population, they carry a ton of weight in Washington. How is the death penalty justified when 1. It's been proven that innocent people have been executed too. It doesn't make even a dent in the prison population, not even 0.01%. 3. It doesn't save money because of the necessary C.1 lengthy trial and appeals process. 4. It doesn't act as a deterrent, because criminal psychology and basic common sense says that people who commit serious crimes do not believe they will be caught, and do not weigh life sentences against capital punishment. Murder-suicide is quite popular. 5. Most of the world has abolished, or is in the process of abolishing it, leaving pretty much only the worst names like North Korea, Saudi Arabia and China. How only 36% of Americans have a passport? People keep talking about the size of the country, but the real answer is cost. If you don't live within a couple driving hours of Canada or Mexico, you are taking a flight. A flight to those countries is a few $100s. If you want to go across the Atlantic or Pacific, or to South America, you're closer to the thousands, or well into the thousands, especially with family. I live on the East Coast and a few years ago it cost me around $1,300 to fly to Germany. Amazingly, that was $100 cheaper than flying across the US to California. Flights are expensive, and getting to other countries takes a long time. The majority of Americans are 1 to 2 paychecks away from being completely broke. Not a lot of people save up for vacations that cost thousands of dollars, especially when they can just drive to a destination in country for a lot less. Worrying about medical bills. I mean, I cannot comprehend how simple operations will end up costing 5-6 digits. It literally makes no sense. Everyone must have their own vehicle. For a leading first world country, how can it be that public transport isn't getting the attention it deserves? Police brutality. Every day I see here another innocent person being killed by police. Why aren't Americans putting these cops to jail for murder? In Europe, even firing a warning shot is taken super seriously. Hospitals bill the insurance as much as they think they can get. The insurance company argues it down, pays what your plan requires them to, and then pass the rest on. Public transit in the big cities can be good. Most of us live in suburbs or rural areas, where there just isn't any. There's also a degree of independence to owning your own vehicle, and Americans love independence. An officer just has to claim they were in fear for their life to use deadly force. The legal system protects them. That's why there are some that are completely opposed to body cameras. How the public opinion can be so turned against things that are actually beneficial to the people and to you, because they are not in line with your political ideology, because they are not proposed by somebody you voted for, or because you were told to hate it by your clearly biased news broadcasting network.